Welcome back to this episode of Ladies in the Law. My name's Allison Melendez.
And I'm Michaela.
And we're back to talk about all things related to the law as female attorneys, including how to curate your network in an authentic way, which is the topic of today's episode.
Woo!
And what better way to start off the summer than with talks about networking?
I know, when lots of networking events are happening.
Oh yeah, tons of summer. So one of the big things I wanted to kind of talk about today is networking is kind of a cringe word. I feel like when I was first starting off, anytime someone said networking, it just made me cringe and I felt awkward and uncomfortable. And so we want to give you guys some tips on things you can do. Michaela, what are some things that you do when it comes to networking so that it feels natural and not like this, like another job?
Yeah. I think that that's probably going to be like an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I think networking is like exactly what you're saying. Like it has this huge connotation and almost feels like there's the potential of inauthenticity.
Yeah.
Where it's like, am I going because I'm just trying to grow my network, or am I going because I'm actually trying to curate relationships with people? And I think that every single attorney is going to have, every person who networks, so I guess really any employee, or employers, they also network. We all network.
Everyone.
Everyone. I think it's going to be so individual to you. But the way to figure out what feels best and most authentic is by going. And going to multiple ones. And I know you and I talk before networking events of like, okay, like what is our goal? What is our objective? What are we trying to get out of this? And I think having that clear goal in your brain before going is like the best way to authentically show up, because it's like, I'm not going to leave until I have met my objective.
Of course.
And that objective can be like, I'm going to meet one person that I'm going to actually be able to hang out with outside of this, or I'm going to meet one person who I think I could give some guidance to, or one person that I think would be an amazing mentor for me to pick their brain.
Yeah. And I think just focusing on like not just the legal world, but just in general, networking is so important for many different reasons. And I think when you go in and you're just handing out business cards, like that's not effective. I don't know if that's still the advice given, but I remember back in law school, that was some of the advice that they gave. Like just take a bunch of business cards, hand them out, talk to as many people as you can. And that might work for some people. Totally. It does not work for me. I just feel very phony. I feel like the conversations are very short and just like on to the next. Like it feels so transactional. And for me personally, I want to meet someone and like get to know them. And I don't go in with this objective of like, what can I get from this person? Like I just go in there and I want to meet people that I want to have a relationship with outside of business, outside of work, just someone that I like. And then naturally, I think over time, and it might be over a long period of time, I think naturally you start seeing a return on investment. And I think those people will remember you more if you've developed a relationship and it's not just like, I need this from you. And so here's my business card.
Absolutely. And I think that that's so important too, is like you and I have always said, like, we're playing the long game.
Yeah.
You know, like we want to build connections. We want to show our value. We want to be able to provide something to someone. And so it's like kind of going in with that mindset of like, what can I do for them? Like, how can I show up for them?
Yeah.
I think is like usually more authentic to us and like how we like to operate with people.
Yeah, and I think for people that don't know us, so we love to create events that are smaller, more group-like events so that you can actually have conversations with people. Because one thing I noticed was at some of the larger conferences, legal conferences, there's just so much going on. There's speakers, there's after parties, there's all these networking opportunities, but it's hard to have like a very honest and open conversation with loud music or whatever it may be. So I think for us, it's been important to create these smaller events, smaller groups where you can actually talk to everyone in the group. And we recently did one where it was a tennis event and we worked out, did some tennis things, and then afterwards had lunch and got to meet some incredible female attorneys.
Yes. And I think that's exactly it, because it's like we go to those big legal conferences, right? And we can learn so much. But even there, we like to kind of curate smaller groups so that we can like step away and talk to each other and get to know each other, and beyond the basics, like, so like, what do you do?
Yeah.
What field are you in? How many cases do you have? You know, like the customary conversations that you're going to have. You get to actually kind of go a level deeper and hear each other and validate each other. And like, exactly like you said, like that tennis event, it's like nothing bonds you faster than sweating together. You know what I mean? It's like, I am over here panting. Yeah. And it's like, wow, look at all of us being humans. Like, this is amazing.
And it's fun. You're getting exercise in, you're just hanging out with people. You're not talking about work. Obviously those conversations happen later, but it's nice to just kind of have fun. And I think there's so much to be said about just having fun, like learning to just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
So I think, but for those people that do like larger conferences, some of the things that we were talking about, ways to kind of just make them a little bit more feasible and not as scary and cringy. I think for me, I like to text my group of friends and I'll be like, okay, who's going to this conference? And let's maybe figure out a way to go together, or figure out like a schedule of, maybe you want to see these speakers, I want to see these speakers. Let's meet up for lunch or do something so that you're not isolated and going in alone. I love the buddy system.
Oh my God, big fan.
Big fan.
Yeah, we were so good at that. Where it's like, hi, like I signed up for this. Like, want me to sign you up? Like, do you want to come too? I think it's awesome having a buddy because you can divide and conquer when it's like, oh, I want to learn this, but I also want to learn this, and they're happening at the same time. Like, we're so good at switching notes, comparing notes. Like, okay, we'll take this, you'll do this, and then we'll meet up and compare and talk about what we learned. And I think having a buddy is awesome just in terms of like safety, in terms of comfortability. Like, you and I, we network so well together because it's like, I love bragging about you and all that you do. It's like,
about you.
It's so much easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Where
it
it's
is.
like, let me tell you why she's amazing. So it's
and
like,
it's not awkward to be like, it's so awkward to be like, oh yeah, I handle this kind of law and I have these many cases. Like, it's so,
I know, it does. It's so much easier to like brag about you and all that you do because I get to see that front row seat, you know?
And then it's nice too because it kind of goes to the kind of people we are. We're not out there trying to just bring in business. Like, we're genuinely trying to meet people and tell them what we do naturally. And so I think it just kind of goes into like the authentic way that we show up for these things.
Yeah.
But I think also just like you were talking about the safety aspect, if you're entering, and it doesn't just have to be legal, if you're entering a new profession and you maybe don't know who's who in the zoo or who to avoid, things like that, it's so good to have a group of people you can rely on. So texting your friends or texting people in the industry that you're in and figuring out like, can we go to this together? Can you introduce me to some people?
Absolutely. I think it's just like always awesome to be as prepared as possible for what you don't know is in store. And so that is creating like a safety plan. That's creating a goal when going into something. It's creating some kind of like game plan or action plan that you can like effectuate.
Yes, I agree. And I think, well, everyone's different. So it's just going to depend on what kind of networking style you like. But I don't go to every conference. One, they're very expensive. And I think a lot of times there's repeat speakers that you can just pick one and you'll be fine. But two, I think it also just, that's not my style. Like I said, I like smaller groups. And so I look for conferences with smaller groups that are more tailored to what I'm looking for. So I recently went to the Women in Trial Travel Summit, which I loved. Cannot speak more highly about it. And that for me, it was so beautiful because the sessions for the speakers were different. There were smaller sessions, smaller groups, and the networking opportunities were at the pool and eating tacos, and we're in Mexico, and it was just so much fun. And I would love to do that again. I'm taking you next year.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely am going. I am sold.
But I think there's just so many different conferences. And is there anything you look for in particular? I'm sure something similar, like smaller groups.
Yeah, definitely similar. I think I always, like, anytime I see that a conference has been announced, I like immediately am looking into it. And I'm immediately looking at what it offers. And I'm being honest with myself about where I think I thrive most in terms of, like, I love learning. I love to actually like sit and learn and take notes and absorb. And so I want to make sure that there's a great educational aspect. And I also love to mingle. Like I like making connections with people, but I also want to do it in an authentic way. And so it's knowing where that can happen best. So even like you and I going to the bigger conferences, we like to also be like, okay, like we're going to, we'd love to have a small group do lunch, or we'd love to have a small group go get pedicures together and just like talk. So I think it's even when going to one that you think like, how can I curate a smaller little like group setting, you can still do at these bigger ones, but knowing which ones are like feasible to make that happen.
Absolutely. And figuring out also like there's these number of conferences this year because there's a lot.
I know.
So coordinating, okay, which ones are like the main ones we want to target? And then from those that we want to target, what can we do at those? And then how do you follow up with people after? Because it's not just going to a conference, handing out business cards, and then hoping people will call you. It's following up with people, developing a natural friendship, grabbing lunch, whatever it may be, and not expecting anything of anyone.
Right.
I think one of the big things we focus on is we like to freely give out templates and give out advice to the best of our abilities. And if anyone texts me and asks me a question about a case, if I know the answer, I'm more than happy to share. And if I don't, I'll go find that answer for you.
Someone will have it.
Yep. And 90% of the time, it's just having people reach out to you and being there for people without any expectation of anything in return.
Yeah. I think that's like the healthiest way to like exist and make connections. And I know like Allison and I literally make templates. We have notes. We have everything that like if anyone listening needs
email
something,
templates.
we literally like, oh, I like the way that person responded. I'm going to save that. Like we're constantly creating this little database of like, how can I set future me up for the most amount of success?
Not just the success part, but like also the least amount of work. Because if you have a template and you're like, oh yeah, this one for this, I already figured this out last time.
Yeah.
And it's just plug and play. It's so much faster. So I would love to share any of that with anyone that wants that. But I think just kind of going back to networking, what kinds of conversations do you have with people? Like, do you go in with like, okay, like a script, or are you just like natural about it? How do you approach networking?
I'm laughing because I remember one of the like first networking things I went to alone. I was texting you and I remember sending you a screenshot of my Google search and it was like, how to authentically network. And I was like just all these 10 bullet points of like, introduce yourself, like make eye contact.
I remember in law school, there was like, you need to have an elevator pitch ready to go in case you need a job. And it's like, it's so uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfy. And so it's like, I have definitely like sat in my hotel room looking through like good like questions and things. And then I'm like, none of these sound like me. Like, I'm not going to remember how to say it this exact way because that's not how I speak. And then remember just literally like texting that to you and being like, I feel so ridiculous right now. And you're like, just go and be you. And I'm like, okay, but
how do I do that?
So it's, I think like, no, if I curated a speech in my head, like I would inevitably fumble it because I'm like thinking too hard. And then I'm like, oh, is this person even listening? Is it loud? Too loud? They can't hear me. So I think like I build a lot of it off of who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Like I think you kind of can read it where it's like, okay, maybe I might start with the like, hey, like I'm Michaela, I'm a personal injury attorney. Like, what do you practice? And then kind of talk to like, oh, how long have you been in the field? Like, but then I like to also know who they are as a person outside of it. Right. So, and I'm assuming that a lot of the time they've had those conversations
over and over.
Yeah, I'm probably literally the 15th person asking them in like a 30-minute span. So I also want to be like, oh, what do you do outside of the law? Like, what do you do to like unwind? Like, what hobbies do you do?
Yeah.
Like, where do you live? Like, what do you like to do there? Things where it's kind of like a refreshing conversation for them and me, because I'm sure I've had that conversation a bunch of times. And it literally reminds me of like recruitment going through like, in college, where it's like I got to a point where I was being asked the same questions and I would preempt it. I'd sit down, I'm like, hi, I'm Michaela. This is what I did over the summer. And things where it's like, I don't want to create a space for someone where they think that it's just going through the motions.
And it's like so robotic too at a certain point. Like when you have that conversation over and over, you're just like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Spitting it out. I think one thing for me, I ask a lot of questions. I don't like to talk about myself. And so I just ask a bunch of questions. Yeah. And then obviously at a certain point, the individuals starts asking me questions. And what I like is I try to remember something like a fun fact to help remember that person. So maybe they have like a very cool hobby, or they have a really cute pet.
I love swapping pets.
Yes,
Oh my
like that one guy from the Kings game
Yes.
had a really cute dog.
Oh gosh, so cute.
And those things for me, it's if you've been able to guide the conversation in a natural way, those things will come up, and then they'll also remember you for asking, because maybe not everyone asks about that specific fun fact or whatever it may be. So I definitely like, what do you do outside of work? What made you go to law school?
Yeah.
That one's a really interesting
I
one.
love that one. I love learning people's why.
Yeah.
Like, why are you practicing law? Like, why are you here? What keeps you here? Not even like, why did you choose to be here, but why do you choose to stay here?
Yeah.
I think it's huge, because I think that we should always kind of be asking ourselves that question, because like when you are driven by your passion, everything flows from that. And if you are like in a space where it's stressful and you feel like you're drowning and it's inundating, like taking that step back and just asking like, why am I still here? Like, why am I doing this? Why did I want to be here? It's huge, because it centers yourself based off of like your purpose and your why.
I love that. And I think it also kind of, one of the goals that I go into any networking events, I think we both are very passionate about our careers, and we like what we do and we enjoy helping people. But not everyone does. And so when I go to networking events, I want to surround myself with passionate people that enjoy what they do and want to give back. And so at a certain point, like I want to make sure I'm giving back to younger generations that are barely starting off and practicing. And so for me, it's finding people that also have shared that passion and have that drive and have that fire, because that allows me to then push myself to be better and reach out to these people to learn tips and tricks, and just always learning, trying to grow and trying to figure out ways to improve. Because if you're just going in to build up a stack of business cards that you're probably never going to look at again, that's not effective. Yeah. It's not going to really bring you the results you want, I think.
Absolutely. And I think like this is kind of a philosophy that like I follow in terms of my friends, in terms of my like who you surround yourself by.
Yep. Birds of a feather.
Exactly. And it's like, I want to be proud of like my curated network. I want to be proud of the people that I'm surrounding myself by. I want to be inspired by them. I want to be inspiring to them. I want to continuously like grow beside them. I think that that's so important. And that's getting to like the questions that you ask and getting to know that person's like core and their morals and their values and how they show up. And I either want to like learn something from someone or be able to like teach someone something.
Yeah.
Because that's how you like effectuate change, and that's how you grow beside your people. But you have to ask those questions to get to know whether or not they align with like the kind of advocate you want to be or grow to be.
And not make assumptions, because I recently went to an event called the Mompreneur event.
Oh yeah.
By Lean In. So it was great because I assumed everyone was a personal injury attorney.
Yeah.
Wrong. I was talking to this one lady, and she's like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I was like, "Oh, PI." And she assumed I meant private investigator. And I was like, and so she was really confused. She's like, "Oh, do you like stalking people?" And I was like, "What are we talking about?" Turns out she was an engineer for NASA. Wow. And I was like, how freaking cool is that?
Yeah.
Like, I just assumed this event of mom attorneys was it was just going to be like that, but they had it was like completely different landscape, and there were engineers and there were doctors and all kinds of really powerful women. And I was like, this is amazing. So I think for the future, I do want to network out. I always want to network outside of just the legal world, because I think you can meet such incredible people.
Absolutely.
And it helps you grow as a person.
Absolutely. And so I think it's like, it goes back to just like knowing like, okay, I'm going to this event. I want to have a goal. I want to have an objective. And I think like there will be people that thrive in going and just talking about the law and just going and passing out their cards. And that is going to work for so many people. It doesn't feel authentic to how we want to show up. And so that doesn't mean that it's wrong or like not a good way to do it, because that is authentic to many people and it works. Yeah. But what works best for you is figuring out what feels true to you, because that's going to be the easiest way to show up. It is what feels like natural.
What feels natural will make you then project yourself and you're not going to be robotic or maybe come off ingenuine in conversations. And I think for us, that's been super effective. And if other people have other approaches, we'd love to hear those as well.
Definitely.
Just trying to help. The goal is to try to help people not feel like networking is this ugly word or like this, this thing that like we have to do. It's important, but people don't really like to do because it's additional work. And so if anyone has any tips or suggestions, we'd love to hear those as well. But that concludes our episode for the day. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
Bye.